Now that we've spent plenty of time learning about adding and subtracting integers using the number line and the chip models, we now really need to get down to the rules so that we can just always apply those now that we understand why they work the way they do. So the first thing that we're going to make sure you know is adding integers. And here are the steps for finding or for adding integers. So we need to find the absolute value of the integers first. And then we have to consider those signs prior to finding the absolute values. Because of course, I know that if you do it after, you realize that both of those numbers would be positive. So we look at the original problem and we sing our little song here. If the signs are the same, find the sum. If the signs are different, find the difference. So that should be easy enough to remember, and these are one of the many things that I expect to hear when you're singing math songs. This is one of them. And then finally, the sign of your answer, or the final sum, is the same as the larger absolute value. So make sure that you've written these steps into your notes notebook, and then we'll go on and do some examples. So our first example, we know that we're going to be finding the absolute value, but we want to consider those numbers afterwards. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. The absolute value of -7 is 7. And we have to say, if the signs are the same, find the sum. So I can stop right there because these signs are the same, which means I'll be finding the sum. So 5 plus 7 is 12. And we know that the sign will be always that of the larger absolute value, which of course is 7. But you might want to, step back for a moment and think about the fact that these are both the same. They're both negative. So your answer, of course, will also be negative. The answer there is -12. So over here, we've got +2 plus +6. We find those absolute values. So +2 is 2. +6 is 6. If the signs are the same, find the sum. They, of course, are the same. And I realize that these are adding both positives, which you've been doing for quite some time, but we want to see how those rules always work. So, of course, we're finding the sum. 2 plus 6 is 8. And the larger absolute value is 6. So, of course, as you already knew, the answer is going to be positive. Now, our next problem down here, we've got -3 plus +4. We'll find the absolute values. The absolute value of -3, remember, absolute value is always a distance. How far is that number away from 0? So -3, of course, is 3 units away from 0. And the absolute value of +4 is 4. And now we go, of course, right to our song. If the signs are the same, find the sum. They're not the same. If the signs are different, find the difference. The signs are different. So at this one, I'm going to be finding the difference. The difference means I'm going to be subtracting. So to make this look correct, I'll do 4 minus 3. The difference is 1. And then I look at my two absolute values. This one has the larger absolute value, and that is positive. So my final answer is +1. Our next example here is -8 plus +1. Find the absolute values. Absolute value of -8 is 8. Absolute value of +1 is 1. If the signs are the same, find the sum. If the signs are different, find the difference. Here we are, they're different. So I know I'm going to be subtracting. Those absolute values are already in the correct order, so I'll just put a minus sign in here. 8 minus 1 is 7. The larger absolute value is 8. I look up here, that means it's -7. That looks a little funny. Let's just make sure that you know that it's a negative when you look back at this. So that's -7 is the answer. Okay, so those are the rules for when I add integers. Next, we'll look at the rules for subtracting integers. So, before we do anything, we start with the math cha-cha-cha. Oh boy, another song. Stay, change, change, cha-cha-cha. Make sure you say the cha-cha-cha or you'll get it wrong. And now, of course, I've changed my subtraction problem to an addition problem. So now I'll add as usual. So I follow those very same steps that I followed previously. So you should stop the video if you haven't already and write down all of these steps, and then we'll do some examples. Okay, so here we are with some examples. Got -5 minus -7. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that I did, in fact, use the same exact integers, but I've made them subtraction problems instead. Let's see what happens. So, I take the absolute value of both of these numbers. The absolute value of -5 is 5. Oh, goodness gracious. I skipped a step. I apologize to you for any confusion I might have caused. I almost forgot to sing the Math Cha-Cha-Cha, one of my favorite songs. So stay, this stays the same. Change, I change my subtraction to an addition. Change, I change my -7 to a +7. Cha-cha-cha, don't forget to cha-cha-cha, you'll get it wrong. So I've stayed, changed, changed, cha-cha-cha. Now I add as usual. I find my absolute values. The absolute value of -5 is 5. The absolute value of +7 is 7. And now I sing the song about my addition problem. Be very careful. Some people do get confused and sing about the subtraction, but we've already changed that subtraction to a addition problem. So if the signs are the same, find the sum. They're not different. They're not the same here, so I keep singing. If the signs are different, find the difference. So here I am. They are different. So that means I'm going to be subtracting. I probably want to change the order of these, so it says 7 minus 5. I know that 7 minus 5 is 2, and now I take the sign of that with the larger absolute value. That would be the 7, and again, I only go back to my addition problem. I don't look at that subtraction problem anymore. So the answer is +2. Next problem, I'm subtracting over here, +2 minus +6. I first get to sing my first song. I stay, change, change, cha-cha-cha. Make sure you cha-cha-cha. And now I sing my next song. If the signs are the same, find the sum. If the signs are different, find the difference. Oh, they are definitely different. Again, we've ignored this now, and we're looking at only the addition problem. I know I need to find the absolute values of these numbers. The absolute value of +2 is 2. The absolute value of -6 is 6. I'm finding the difference. So 6 minus 2 is 4. And I take the sign from the larger absolute value. I've got 2 and 6. This is larger. I take the sign as negative, -4. Next one. Here I am. I've got -3 minus +4. Stay. Change, change, cha-cha-cha. Don't forget that. Now I first find my absolute values. It doesn't really matter if you sing the song or find the absolute values first, but we want to keep it consistent. I know the previous problem I sang first because, well, singing is fun. So the absolute value of -3 is 3. The absolute value of -4 is 4. If the signs are the same, find the sum. Well, I don't have to go any further. I know they're the same. I'm finding the sum. 3 plus 4 is 7. I use the sign of the larger absolute value, but in this case, don't forget, they're both the same now, so it's -7. Next problem. I've got -8 minus +1. So I stay, change, change, cha-cha-cha. Don't forget to cha-cha-cha. It's the favoriteest part, and it's also going to mean I get this right. So now I'm going to find those absolute values. Absolute value of -8 is 8. Absolute value of -1 is 1. If the signs are the same, find the sum. These are the same. I'm finding the sum. And again, don't forget, I'm now looking only at the addition problem, not looking at that original anymore. 8 plus 1, I know is 9. My rule says take that sign from the larger absolute value, but these are both the same, so I know my answer is negative. And there you have it, the rules for adding and subtracting integers.